Hello, YouTube audience. Today is the 14th of November, late fall here in Seattle. The rain has started, and my blueberry bonsai has just lost all its leaf. Maybe one leaf left that's very nicely red. So it is almost ready to go into full dormancy, but the energy that was from the leaf is still moving in the branch system. So what I'm going to do is the last pruning of the year. This would allow it to redistribute the energy during the winter, and also prepare for next year's growth. Different people grow bonsai for different reasons. Currently, I'm trying to develop the tree, and I'm going to sacrifice a lot of flowers. A lot of the branches I'm going to prune, you can see maybe these little buds. A lot of them are flower buds. So if I prune them now, next year, beginning of next year, I would have significantly less flower. So that's something to put in mind. If someone is growing it for the flower, they probably should not prune it right now. But I'm just trying to develop the branch structure. The flower is not my top priority right now, so I'm still going to prune it at this time. So one advantage of pruning it when it's devoid of leaves is you can see the branch structure really well, and the pruning is much easier. But also there is a time window. You probably should not prune it while it's completely dormant. There is a window from the plant start to drop its leaves on. There may be 1 to 3 weeks that it is the optimal window to prune a deciduous bonsai. While it has taken the energy from the leaves, it still have some activity in the branches to allow the tree to seal or to compartmentalize the cut wounds before it go full dormant. So I'm probably at the end of the window for this plant. So if I wait 1 more week, I probably should not prune it. So I'm just going to go right in and see what I'm going to prune. So you can see these branches, they have their first bifurcation here, What we want to create in bonsai is the branches continue to bifurcate. So we have the first bifurcation, and I want to get the next bifurcation. I probably, while I'm pruning I'm starting with the branches that's more simple, so I probably can move. So these looks already swell. They are not really swell buds, they are flower buds. So when I prune it right now, it's going to sacrifice the flower next year, but it's not my priority with the flowers. So these flower buds, so we have several leaf buds here. So we want to prune to at least we have 2 leaf buds, so that next year when new branches come out, we have more bifurcation or ramification. So I'm going to prune all the flower buds off, leaving at least 2 to 3 leaf buds. So next year they are going to bifurcate. So you can see there are still water in the branches, so they are alive. I'm leaving a stump to the, I'm not pruning exactly up to the last bud, so that we have a space for dieback if it happens. So next I'm going to prune this one. This is almost like a back branch. So we can see 1 bud, 2 buds. There may be even a smaller buds in the earlier place, but it doesn't matter. We still want it to have a branch structure. If it bud out too close to the last place it bifurcate, it may create too much branching. So I'm going to prune to these 2 buds. I'm going to prune here, leaving a stump. So that's all the flower buds are gone. So we still have 1 bud, 2 bud that's easily visible. There may be a less visible bud early on the branch, but it's not significant. So the hope is next spring, this 2 places starting to bud out, so we have more bifurcation. So next I'm going to tackle these lower branch, this 2. Again, I'm going to find places with several buds and putting in mind that we still want some movement. So there is a beautiful curve there. I'm not going to cut off the curve, but right past the curve we have, on the top of the curve we have 1 bud, right past the curve we have 1 bud. So I'm going to cut after the second bud I see there. So next year the hope is it's going to have form new branches here and here. So we have continue the bifurcation, creating more branches, more twigeries to make it look like a miniature tree. So this lower branch, we see 1 bud here, 1 bud on the back, 1 bud on the left. Thinking about the movement of the branch, I'm going to have all these save this downward movement while cutting on the 3rd bud, past the 3rd bud here, leaving a stump. So this is the 3rd bud. The hope is it's going to bud out here and on the back next year. So all these are small prunings. It is, I don't know whether blueberry would bleed in the spring, but if for plants, if something doesn't bleed in the spring, it would be okay to prune it in the spring, but it is to prune at this time is even more appropriate for species like Japanese maple that bleeds excessively in the spring. You probably don't want to prune it in early spring, but at this time it would be very, very appropriate to prune a Japanese maple. Right after it starts dropping leaves, we have a 3 weeks window for it. So I think this plant started dropping leaves maybe 3 weeks ago. So I'm at the end of the window for this plant. So we see these top branch. I'm going to preserve this curve, this movement, and prune it at the first bud past the movement. It may be a flower bud, so judging on how fat this bud is, it's probably a flower bud. So I'm probably still going to have a little bit of flower next year, but it's not my priority. I prune off the top branch here. I'm going to tackle this branch now. We have a bifurcation. This new branch didn't completely flush out this year, but next year it's probably going to create bifurcation. This is also the case. This summer I pruned it, it doesn't have new branch come out, but next spring it's going to come out. So here we have a branch growing downward. We are going to count the buds. We have a buds probably here, very close to the base. I'm not going to prune to that. The second bud's going on top, and the third bud's going outside, the fourth bud going backward to the tree. So we have a left, I should say, going towards the viewer, going backward to the viewer, distributed on both sides of the branches. I would like it to bifurcate that way. So I'm going to prune to here. So the hope is next year we have 2 branches come out from both sides, either side of the branch. This branch I pruned in the summer, didn't bud out this year, but hopefully next year it's going to create new buds. You can see there is a defect on this bonsai right here because we don't have enough branching between this space, so we have an overly empty space. But hopefully next year, if this branch bud out more, I hope maybe somewhere in here there's something that come out that would make the problem less severe over time. It's an opportunistic thing. So this is pretty good, pruning the top, and we are going to have several branches lower that we need to tackle. There is a branch here that I don't really like. It kind of make this area, this branch, although it bifurcate, which is something we want, but it made the area here too crowded. So I'm going to completely get rid of that 2 branches here. because it's a little bit too crowded for me. I'm going to leave a stump for dieback, but I'm going to completely get rid of that. And let you see what I get rid of. So it's a good branch, but it is on the coming up from the wrong place. That's why I'm going to get rid of that to create some space. You're looking at it from upside down, so if you look at it on the front, you may see more of what I'm talking about. So I'm getting rid of that branch completely. It has made the branch upward of that thicker, create some taper, so it has done its job. So these places, there are several places that I pruned earlier this year. It didn't bifurcate. For example, here I prune. It doesn't. We don't have two branches come out next to the place I prune. So I may cut the branch off completely again, and hopefully it's going to come out next year, bifurcate next year. We have two buds on both sides of the branch, so I'm going to cut here. Hopefully next year the new branches are going to come out on both sides. Then I need to tackle this branch. This is new growth, this year's new growth. I cut it here, only one branch come out, so it has created movement, but it hasn't created bifurcation. What I'm going to do is, I see one bud coming towards the front and one bud coming towards the back. I'm going to prune it again in hope that next year that these two buds are going to come out. I'm going to probably leave the rest of the branches alone, because this was a plant that was growing maybe like this direction, and I repotted it in a semi-cascade direction. What I discover is that this plant is it bud back from the old wood pretty easily. This is a new bud from a very old wood, but it's also a bit apically dominant. So this area, that's facing up, has much more development than all these cascading area, which is currently facing a little bit downward. And so they did not get a lot of new buds this year. I would ideally want this area to develop a little bit more. So next year I would need to think about how to deal with the problem. One possible solution is to just grow it like that. Somehow put something under the pot to make it position like that, so that the cascading branch can get a little bit more growth. But I'm not sure if it's possible, but it's a possible option. So these pots, I'm just going to leave it, not going to prune it. Hopefully next year it's going to develop more. That's what I'm hoping. This branch is kind of weak, but it has a lot of movement, so I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. The movement is very unpredictable, although it's wired, but it looks wild. So I may just, are some dead stump here. I may just clean up a little bit of these dead stump. That's already completely dry out, and it's useless. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit. Otherwise, I'm not going to touch the cascading part of the tree. Just let it develop next year. Also, there are some flower buds forming, so we may see a little bit flowers next year on the tip of these branches. These were stumps left last year to allow space for dieback. So now it's completely dry up. I can just cut them. I could wire some of the branches down too, but it's not going to respond to the wire right now. It has to be in the growing season, so I'm not going to bother to wire it. Maybe start wiring them next spring. Okay, there is a stump here. I can clean up. These are stumps too. I'm not sure. Maybe I can try to clean it up a little bit and see if it's completely dry up yet. I probably should still wait a little bit, maybe wait for, well, there is still a stump here. I'm just clean the big stump out a little bit. There is still a stump there. I think the stump is completely dry up, so I probably can clean it further, but I will leave it for next year. There is also a protruding stump here that I leave last year just for safety, for some space for the tree to die back to. Now I can clean it a little bit more next year. When the stump further dry out, I probably would clean it up even more, but this is looking pretty good. Okay, there is one more thing I need to do. I fertilized the tree earlier this fall, and the birds raided the plants to probably pick up all the fertilizers, burn away a lot of soils and the sphagnum moss I put on the soil to prevent the soil being washed away during watering. So the birds raided my soil to get all the fertilizer. So I'm going to simply add a little bit of soil to the surface and then add a little bit of sphagnum moss and then probably do the last fertilization of the year. So these soil are called kanuma. They are acidic soil. Blueberry is a plant that like acidic soil. That's why I'm using kanuma. And on top of that, I'm going to put some fertilizer on there to prevent the fertilizer being stolen by the birds. Again, I'm going to put the fertilizers in the tea bag, which is also a pretty common practice to prevent animals from stealing the fertilizer. So just a normal tea bag, and I'm going to put the fertilizer in. I'm using this Dr. Earth Acid Lover because for azalea, camellia, rhododendron, and maples, they are all acid loving plants. So is the blueberry. So because it's fall, I'm not going to use a very strong fertilizer. This fertilizer has only 3% nitrogen, so it's a relatively low nitrogen fertilizer, which is appropriate for fall fertilization. It's going to get the plant ready for next spring's growth. This is probably about the last time. The plant ideally should be fertilizer once a month during the whole fall season, but this is probably the very end of the fall season that you can fertilize. I'm just going to put some fertilizer in the tea bag. So it's just the tea bag. Put the fertilizers in. Not a lot of fertilizer, just a little bit. And I'm going to seal the fertilizer in the bag, and going to fold the bag a little bit. There is a side that there is only one layer of paper. There is a side there is 3 layers. The one layer go near the soil. So ideally there would be no space between the soil and the fertilizer. So directly putting the fertilizer on the soil is the best choice. However, because the birds are stealing the fertilizer without the tea bag, as a protection, I would have to choose the 1 layer side of the tea bag and put it on the soil. And then I'm using a pin to pin the tea bag down. I could put 2 bags, one on each side. That's probably an okay idea. This side, we still have some fertilizer left. The birds didn't get everything. but probably soon they will get everything. This is organic fertilizer. It's going to release slowly in the rest of the fall, and so that the plant can get well prepared for next year's growth. And this would be the last fertilization of the year. The temperature now occasionally drop to 0 degrees C or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but still we have a lot of days that's above 0 degree temperature. So it is still okay to fertilize. Once it drops below 0 all the time, the fertilizer, a lot of the fertilizer would not get degraded and will not get into the soil. So I'm going to try to put the sphagnum moss back. Hopefully the birds will not raid them. This time, even they raid the system, they probably will not be able to get the fertilizer out of the tea bag, but they may still take the sphagnum moss. The conuma is a soil that's lighter than water, so every time you water them, if there's nothing on top of it, it's going to float and get out of the pot very easily. That's another reason why I put sphagnum moss on top of the conuma soil. It's kind of difficult to water without but if there is something like a tea bag on top of it or some sphagnum moss on top of it, it's going to be much easier. So next year I'm going to repot the plant. I'm going to even put some sphagnum moss on top of the tea bag to keep the tea bag wet. Currently we're raining all the time, so I'm not going to water the plant. I'm going to let the rainwater to wash the fertilizer and deliver it to the root system. I'm not going to water with our own water. The rainwater is much better than a lot of the tap water we have, because the rainwater dissolves the carbon dioxide in it and is slightly acidic, which the plant loves. And a lot of the tap water here, not all the tap water, but in Pacific Northwest, it's a little bit alkaline, which is good for people's health. It's actually good for us to drink the water, but it's not as good for plants. These plants need a little bit acidic water to take up the nutrient in the soil. If the water is very alkaline, they would have a hard time taking up nutrition. So I'm put some sphagnum moss on top of the whole thing, including my tea bag and the soil, so that if I need to water it, but nowadays it's mostly watered by rain, which is much easier. The rain are too small, too gentle to wash out the soil. Okay, so this is what we have currently. From the front view, it looks like this. And it's in a plastic training pot, which is correct in its height for a semi-cascade pot. It should be a little bit with some height, but the shape is not correct because this is a colorful shape and color are not correct. This is more gentle, not very powerful tree, so it should not be in a pot with sharp edges. That's for more powerful trees. And it is a very colorful tree. It's a red leaf tree in the fall, so it should be in a glazed pot, in a more colorful pot. So next year I'm going to put this into a new pot like this, and it may not be the most fancy pot. Someone just get rid of it for people to pick up for free when they move their office, but I think it's a nice pot for this plant. And next year I'm going to put it in this pot. This pot could be separated into two. The thing is, we don't have a draining hole for this pot, so next year I'm going to try to drill some holes into this pot and see if I can make it into a bonsai pot. This was probably not a bonsai pot for its previous use, but this is the update for this plant. I've make a good document of what I did, and I hope you enjoy the video too, and I will see you next time. Bye.